What if the NBA playoffs started today? How would the matchups look? Who can be the next Cinderella team like the Miami Heat from last year? And more importantly, who is going to win that Larry O'Brien championship trophy? We answer it all here on today's show. But if you enjoy, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. On the road to 7,000 subscribers. It's absolutely insane the growth of this channel. But without further ado, I'm going to stop yapping. Let's get into it. Kicking off here with a quick look at how the standings laid out. I did do this prep a little bit early, so these are the standings as far as Monday. So yesterday's games don't count in the in-season tournament, and that crazy Boston and Indiana game doesn't count. Regardless, I don't think it'll affect the standings too much. So these are the standings I'm going with for today's video. So now that you guys get it, again, East on the left, West on the right, let's kick off here in the Eastern Conference play-in, excuse me. But we're going to kick off here with the Miami Heat and the Cavs matchup. Very simple how these are going to work. You're going to see a lot of teams on your screen. If the box is highlighted, that is the matchup we're talking about. And of course, this box here in the middle of your screen, that is where the winner would go. Hopefully, that makes sense, right? But for the Miami Heat and the Cleveland Cavaliers, I think, again, the Miami Heat had a lot of playoff success last year. And this is a team that just flips that switch come playoff time. And again, we're saying that, hey, playoffs start tomorrow. So that that switch is going to be flipped a lot sooner than we all thought. But again, at the same time, the Miami Heat this season have been playing a lot more. They've been taking a regular season a lot more serious than last year. I guess they don't want to end up in that 8th seed and have to go through leaps and bounds just to make the NBA Finals with all the injuries. But again, they are the 7th seed due to tiebreakers, whatever the case may be. The Cavaliers, on the other hand, I'm a Cavs fan, and we have not looked the greatest this season. It's really just here, Donovan Mitchell, go win us the game. And if Donovan Mitchell can't put up 60 points, this team doesn't really have a chance. We haven't seen the development and growth of Evan Mobley and Darius Garland that we wanted to see. I mean, we've gotten a lot of good role player minutes, and Jared Allen's looked okay in spans of time. But overall, as a unit, we have not had that same fight and hunger from last year, and the defense has definitely tailed off a little bit here in 2023, 2024. So in my opinion, I think in a one-game setting, I think the Miami Heat would get the advantage. And again, that's coming from a Cavs fan. But Miami Heat would advance to face the young Orlando Magic in the first round. And we'll talk about that here in a moment. A lot of people's favorite upset pick here in the first round. But then we have the Brooklyn Nets and the Atlanta Hawks. Again, one-game scenario. Whoever wins this matchup gets to face the Cleveland Cavaliers in a one-game win-and-get-in situation. For the Brooklyn Nets and the Atlanta Hawks, to me, I think in a one-game setting, the Brooklyn Nets, they definitely have probably a more cohesive unit. But in a one-game setting, again, I'm going to trust the star players, and I'm going to trust the head coaching advantage. All of that goes to the Atlanta Hawks, and not to mention the Atlanta Hawks just have this tendency, like they did in the play-in game against the Heat last year, where they just chuck up so many threes that they can really just win the game, even if they don't play any defense. But I'm going to trust the Atlanta Hawks' firepower and the potential they have offensively with the coaching advantage of Quinn Snyder. Give me the Atlanta Hawks. Now, if you paid attention, on the left side of your screen, you see the Brooklyn Nets screen and their logo, their box rather, went gray. That means they're eliminated from the playoffs, okay? Hopefully that is very understandable, but that is going to be how it goes for the remainder of this video. But then finally, you have the Cleveland Cavaliers and you have the Atlanta Hawks. Winner goes to be the 8th seed to play the Boston Celtics. I know, not the greatest reward to play the most complete team in basketball, a team that should go far in this year's playoffs. But to me, in a one-game setting, call it bias, call it whatever you want. But I think, I'm going to trust Donovan Mitchell more than I'm going to trust the duo of DeJounte Murray and Trae Young. I'm going to trust the defense of the Cavs to, again, come playoff time, to look what happened to us last year. We got embarrassed. This year, come playoff time, if we make it, we have to leave our mark, whether if that's in the winning category or the losing category. But to me, I think we will at least start our playoff journey on the right foot, and we will get into the playoffs over the Atlanta Hawks in a one-game setting. But again, the Hawks shoot so many threes and they score so many points that they could really, in a one-game setting, beat anybody, is a good way to put it. But you see in the green, we have the Miami Heat and the Orlando Magic. That is our 2-7 matchup. And our 1-8 is the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics. Now let's transition to the Western Conference. We have the LA Lakers at home. I'm going to call it Staples Arena. I know it's not called that anymore. But then you have the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, again, I should also mention this, that these are as of account as of Monday. When I made these videos, if let's say LeBron was hurt with an injury, I'm not counting LeBron on this roster because, again, it's happening today. We're not assuming full health here in today's video, right? But for the Los Angeles Lakers, they do have their full unit, so that's a pretty good thing aside from one or two pieces. And then for the Pelicans, CJ McCollum did just recently return, so that is, of course, good because they have their big three. However, Trey Murphy, and I think he's the X factor for the success in the playoffs of the New Orleans Pelicans. Call me crazy, I know, but Trey Murphy brings that spacing that Brandon Ingram, CJ McCollum, and of course Zion need to win big time games. But Trey Murphy, again, he's out in real life and he's going to be out in today's video. But for this matchup, again, I think it makes more sense to go with the Los Angeles Lakers, even though the Lakers love to play with their food. There's no easy game for the Los Angeles Lakers. It doesn't matter if they're up 30 against the Golden State Warriors, or if they're, or if they're playing a team like the Detroit Pistons, like they did the other day. It's going to be a dogfight until the very end. And for me, I will trust the fact that the Lakers do have LeBron James and they do have a better supporting cast. And of course, Anthony Davis against his old team. Maybe that's all the firepower he needs. But for the simple fact that I grew up in Cleveland and I want to see LeBron win one more ring, I'm going to give the slight edge to the Los Angeles Lakers. But again, I could very well see the Pelicans winning this game because the Lakers, sometimes they don't always show up for the big time games. It's a good way to put it. But then you have the Clippers and the Rockets here. A matchup that these teams met once prior to this season. And yes, the Clippers did have their big four future first ballot Hall of Famers of James Harden, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Russell Westbrook. And the Clippers squeaked out a win. I think it was like 106-100 in one of the play-in games. I watched the game. It was a very exciting game, right? But for the Rockets, it really comes down to how good is Al P going to be, and I don't think the Clippers have anybody to guard Al P unless they want to throw a Kawhi Leonard on him, or if they want to throw a Paul George. But even then, those guys might be just too small physically to guard a guy like Alperen Sengun. But ultimately, again, when it's a matchup like this and it can really go up in the air, I'm going to trust the star power and I'm going to trust the head coaching advantage. So I think the Clippers have both of that. Of course, they have Kawhi and Paul George, maybe a top 5 duo in the NBA is a good way to put it. And again, they have the experience. They've been there before. Kawhi Leonard's won a championship. Russell Westbrook and James Harden, they've been on deep playoff runs, as well as Paul George. And of course, Tyronn Lue is an NBA champion in his own right. So I will trust the LA Clippers in this matchup just based off of the experience and the head coaching advantage of Tyronn Lue. So I will take that in that matchup. But again, I love Alperen Sengun. I've been raving about him for months. But then we have the Pelicans and the Clippers. For a lot of the same reasons that I just mentioned, I will give the advantage to the team that has 4 first ballot future Hall of Famers on their team. Is talent everything? No, we know fit is more important. But again, I just think as of right now, if these teams match up, I'm going to trust Kawhi over Brandon Ingram, and I'm going to trust Paul George in a playoff setting over a guy like Zion Williamson. But I really want to see the Pelicans make the playoffs. I think if we're talking about predicting rest of season, I would most likely have the Pelicans in maybe at the 7th spot over the Lakers because I just want to see how they do in a playoff setting, right? But then here we go. 7, we have the Lakers going to OKC to take on the Young Thunder. And then we have the Clippers taking on the younger, relatively, Timberwolves team. So those are going to be some interesting first-round matchups. But let's go back to the Eastern Conference. We have the 1-8 matchup of the Celtics and the Cavs. The Celtics, most complete team in basketball, no doubt about it. Now, I will say, Kristaps Porzingis is out for today's video. Again, I know it's a small injury he has as of right now, but right now he's out. And that, of course, plays into, how I wanted to do these videos. It is as of today. So, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, and Jason Tatum, with the supporting cast they have, is still plenty to get it done. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I will say the Boston Celtics win this matchup against the Cavaliers. The Cavaliers this year, just not the same team. Maybe if we had the same defensive intensity and same defensive rank as last year, I would say, maybe we can make it interesting. Saying that Donovan Mitchell is a top 15 player in the NBA, and the fact that this guy can score with the best of them, maybe he can keep us in these games. Maybe Darius Garland can step up to the occasion for once and not just one game a series. However, the Celtics team is just too complete with Chris Stapps. I think it's probably a 4-0 tough sweep, maybe a 4-1 tough sweep. Regardless, I just think the Celtics are just ready more so now than ever. And plus, this might be Donovan Mitchell's last series as a Cavalier. And then we have the 4-5 matchup, and this is, again, no shocker, it's a 4-5, but I can really see it going either way. With the Sixers, you have the best player in the series. You have Joel Embiid going up against a team that has been defensively great yet again under Tom Thibodeau. But to me, the difference in this matchup comes down to Joel Embiid is just that much better than any other big in this game, as he's going to get Mitchell Robinson in foul trouble. And if it's not Mitchell Robinson, good luck to Isaiah Hartenstein. He's going to be in foul trouble. I think the saving grace in this one could be for New York, as they have better depth around their stars in Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. But again, I think Tyrese Maxey playing at the level that he is, I mean, he's top 5 in MVP voting at the moment. So you have 2 top 5 caliber MVP players going up against a Knicks team that is just very solid top to bottom. Again, it can go either way. I think the Knicks definitely have a fighter's chance, but give me the Philadelphia 76ers is a good way to put it, behind Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid to continue their excellence from the early part of the year. And then we have the bottom half of the Eastern Conference first round, the Milwaukee Bucks, Indiana Pacers. This might be the funnest first round series, but I guess I'm going to say that about a lot of these. For the Milwaukee Bucks, though, I mean, you have Dame and Giannis. The only difference this year, they don't defend anything. They don't defend a single thing but themselves. And that's just very unlike Giannis and unlike this Bucks era with Giannis and Chris Middleton. But I mean, hey, they're playing a team that they have to defend somewhat. This Indiana Pacers team, as we saw last night, they're capable of beating teams like the Boston Celtics with their high-powered, fun offense. And though unorthodox at times, the Pacers, I mean, they're the best offense in the NBA for a reason. They get up and down. They score a lot of points. And, of course, to do that, they get a lot of shots up. So I think this could definitely be an interesting series where the Pacers might find themselves in a potential upset over the Milwaukee Bucks. But just due to Giannis, being Giannis and Dame being so hungry for that championship. I mean, again, Dame needs a championship. And Giannis, he's desperate to show the world that he's still the best player in the world. So to me, I will give the edge to the veteran team that's been there, plus Dame and the Milwaukee Bucks. And then at the bottom of the conference, this one might raise some eyebrows, but I'm going to beat around the bush. I'm not going to beat around the bush, is a good way to put it. I will have the Miami Heat over the Orlando Magic. The Orlando Magic have one of the most complete rosters in the league. I mean, Paolo Banchero all the way down to Jalen Suggs and Marco Fultz. And Wendell Carter, right? But they have some pieces out as of the making of this video. And to me, I think in a playoff setting, I think just like we saw last year in that Knicks and Heat series, where even though the Knicks had maybe a better roster top to bottom, the Miami Heat just got it done based off of pure will and the head coaching advantage in Eric Spoelstra. Again, maybe the best coach here in the NBA. But just in a one-game scenario like this, or not in a one-game, but in a 7-game series where Eric Spoelstra and Jimmy Butler just have a full series to lock in on this young Orlando Magic team that's never been there at this high of a stage, again, as a 2 seed, I think that the Heat will get the advantage in this one, but it will be a 6 or 7 game series. I'm still going to show my flowers to Orlando. They just went on a 9-game win streak. They were one away from their first ever franchise 10 game. But of course, Lonnie Walker and Mikal Bridges had other plans. But to me, I think it sets up a very interesting rematch from last year, where we have, the 1-8 from last year, where, hey, if you can argue, I'll say this, where even though they didn't have Chris Middleton, if Giannis doesn't go down, the Bucks win that series, and who knows what happens after that, right? The domino effect. But Miami Heat beat them, with and without Giannis last year. It's going to set up a very interesting matchup here. And of course, between the Celtics and the 76ers. So we really have 2 rematches from the last 2 years from last year in the playoffs. So that is going to be interesting in itself. And then we have here the 1 and the 8 matchup, the Minnesota Timberwolves. I mean, this might be the best Timberwolves team in franchise history. And I talked about that last Tuesday So if you missed it, go check that out. But I think, the only downside of the Timberwolves team in this video is that they don't have Jaden McDaniels. Of course, he's their best perimeter defender. He is their unsung hero of this team, and he's going to be an all NBA nominee for sure on the defensive side of the ball. But they do play a Clippers team that they could use a Jaden McDaniels against a team that has Kawhi Leonard, a team that has Paul George. I mean, you're really going to be putting yourself in a situation where you have to rely on Mike Conley to guard James Harden, and you have to rely on a Kyle Anderson kind of player to guard Kawhi Leonard, Paul George's of the world. But then if not, you're also going to have your superstar Anthony Edwards be dominant offensively for one, but also guard the perimeter and a guy like Kawhi, Paul George, or even a James Harden. It's going to take a lot out of this Timberwolves team. But for the simple fact that I just have a lot of respect for the Timberwolves team and how they've started this season. Karl-Anthony Towns has been back to his older self, but maybe even more aggressive than he's ever been. And Rudy Gobert, again, is back to being the deep-point version of himself. But again, I mean, even that is an interesting, factor. Is Rudy Gobert is going to have to step out on the perimeter and guard the James Harden of the world, the Kawhi Leonard, the Russell Westbrooks, and even the Paul Georges. He's going to have to step out. I think it's going to be a very interesting matchup. But just due to the respect I have to the start of this early season, I will give the edge to the Minnesota Timberwolves. But I do think that's going to be a 7-game first-round series because there's no Jaden McDaniels. And again, it's those X factors that can make all the difference. You throw Jaden McDaniels in there just to slow down either Kawhi or Paul George, I think it can make all the difference because James Harden's not the greatest playoff performer. But I will still give the edge to the Minnesota Timberwolves. Don't worry, Timberwolves fans. I'm not going to disrespect you like that for Jaden McDaniels, right? But then the 4-5 matchup, definitely going to be the highest watch series in the first round. We have the Sacramento Kings and we have the Phoenix Suns. We have, again, the Suns don't have Bradley Beal, so that'll play a part later on in the video or even right now. But so it's just Devin Booker and it's just Kevin Durant. That's a duo that brought you to the Western Conference Finals last year. And then for the Kings, of course, De'Aaron Fox is back and maybe better than ever as this team is dominating. And I think by the end of the season, they will finish as probably a top 2 seed in the Western Conference. Mark my words now, but this team is just hungry. They want it. I just don't see it. It's hard to say that a team can beat Kevin Durant and Devin Booker in a 7-game series. And again, that's not even mentioning that they still have a guy like Bradley Beal. I think that where this series can get interesting is how much of the depth can the Sacramento Kings, how much better is that going to be over the Phoenix Suns in this matchup? But if you have if you have Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, I think that's all the reasoning you need. So the Sacramento Kings, for the second year in a row, will probably go home in a 6 to 7 game series. So both of these teams are going to be beat up going into the second round of the playoffs. And let's keep that in mind here as we move on in the video. And then we have the Nuggets and the Mavericks. As a Luka fanatic, as a Luka fan, a Kyrie fanatic, Kyrie fan, I really want to go with the Dallas Mavericks in this matchup. But Jamal Murray is back, and this team, though shaky, they're still trying to click on all cylinders like they were last year. There's no doubt about it. I'm going to go with the Denver Nuggets. They're just too complete of a team. Mike Malone has this mindset instilled in these players from top down that one's not enough. We want more. Our window is not going to be open forever. Let's keep winning and winning and winning at a high level. If they can slow Luka down to 30 points instead of 40, or if they can even keep him under 30, I think that's going to be all the difference. It's just going to be a lot on the shoulders of Luka and Kyrie to will this team over the Denver Nuggets. But again, if there was any player to do it, it would be 77. But then we have a 2-7 matchup between the Thunder and the Lakers. Again, I talked about it. I want LeBron to get that 5th ring. I think it really would cement him as the GOAT. At least in my eyes, to me, he's already the greatest I've ever seen play. For that reason, he's the greatest of all time in my eyes. But I just, the Lakers have the depth. They have the veteranship. They've been there before. The Thunder, this is kind of their first time on the scene. The new kids on the block is a good way to put it, at least at this level of the playoff scene. But I will go with the Oklahoma City Thunder. There's a track record where the Thunder have just had the Lakers number over the last couple of years, and they just win each and every time they play. It seems like So to me, I think Shea is growing into a top 5 point guard in the NBA, if not a top 3 point guard in the NBA, behind Luka and Steph. And some would even argue he's over one of those guys. But to me, I mean, this Thunder team just has it all from top down. I mean, Chet is not your average rookie. Should he be a rookie? That's a good conversation we talked about on last Tuesday. But I mean, just Chet, Shea, both J Dubs. I mean, Isaiah Joe is one of those X factors that comes off the bench and can win you a series. I think it's definitely an interesting matchup with all the defensive pieces LA has. But I'm just going to give the edge to the Thunder because they seem to have the Lakers number. But that sets up a 3-2 matchup where the Thunder are going to have home court, but they're younger, they're inexperienced, and the Nuggets, of course, are the reigning champs for a reason. In the Eastern Conference second round, we have four teams that we've seen in these situations a lot over the last seems like decade. But for the Celtics and the Sixers, I think it just comes down to depth. You know, Al Horford is the Joel Embiid stopper, and again, he's not a stopper, but he's a minimizer, is a good way to put it. I just think with the depth of the Celtics, I think it's their year. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown look better than ever, even though not always statistically. And I think when you have a Tyrese Maxey guarded by Drew Holiday, it's gonna really just put this series on. Okay, Joel Embiid, go out there and drop 80 points a night and beat us on your own, because we're gonna have our perimeter guys shut down the rest of the crew. It's gonna force this Sixers team to be all solely on Joel Embiid, in my opinion. And again, Drew Holiday just makes that big of a difference where he can shut down a perimeter player, even of the caliber of a guy like Tyrese Maxey. So to me, give me the Celtics in probably a 5-game series, as crazy as that might sound. But then the 3-7 here, again, a rematch from last year. The Bucks, they have a chip on their shoulder. We're better than what we showed last year. We were maybe the best Bucks team of all time last year, and then we crumbled in the first round to an 8 seed without their third best player. So I think they come into this matchup with a lot to prove. They had a lot of shakeup this offseason. And hey, Damian Lillard needs that first ring, and he's playing against a team he should have went to this offseason, or at least he was rumored to. I think I will give the advantage to the Bucks here. You know, the Heat, they're a good story. I'm sure a lot of fans will be behind them. But when Giannis is healthy and when Dame is hungry, I'm going to trust that team over a team that they're a good team. I mean, Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo is playing at an all NBA level. I want to show them their flowers. Of course, I had 2 All-Stars for the Heat just a few weeks back. But to me, I'm just going to trust the star power in the Milwaukee Bucks. I will say, though, however, this series gets interesting. Let's go back here. The series gets interesting because you have Eric Spoelstra and you have Adrian Griffin. Adrian Griffin has not really made any notable adjustments on his own this year. As the season started out, Dame was playing his, Adrian Griffin's assigned numbers, minutes per game is a better way to put it. But then Dame said, hey, I like to play I like to play this way. This is how I played in Portland for so long. They made that change. But then Giannis was like, hey, we played defense this way. And that, was how we were so great for so long. Boom, they made that change. So to me, a lot of the changes come from the players and not the coaches. So I don't know if the Bucks are a team that's going to make a lot of adjustments. And that is going to set up an interesting 1-3 matchup between, my opinion, the best 2 teams in the East. And again, that part of adjustments is going to be a huge key of why I think a team wins this matchup. But let's get back to that in a moment. And then we have the 1-5 matchup, the Timberwolves with no Jaden McDaniels going up against a Suns team with Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, and of course Yusuf Nurkic and some other solid pieces on this Phoenix Suns roster. But in my opinion, due to the fact that the Timberwolves were beat up in the first round, it's going to be, I think I will say this. I think this matchup, they can match up better than last season or last series, because the Clippers just have so much perimeter depth as far as star power that it's kind of hard to match up against them, for any team, but aside from the Celtics. But for the Suns, I think you could probably put Anthony Edwards, on a guy like Devin Booker. I think that'll be a great series to watch. Just 2 young stars going at it, game in and game out. But if not, you'll have Mike Conley on them, which is just a mismatch. You'll have Kyle Anderson and maybe some help on Kevin Durant. I think it'll be a very interesting matchup as far as, how these teams will, game plan for the opposing side. But I will give the advantage to a team that I know that's been there and done that. And for the most part, I think I'm going to trust Kevin Durant and I'm going to trust Devin Booker, guys that have been there before and done that over the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, again, if Jaden McDaniels is there, a guy that they can throw on Kevin Durant or Devin Booker to minimize him, I'm probably going to take the Minnesota Timberwolves. As crazy as that might sound, I think the Timberwolves are that talented of a team. However, they don't have that all NBA defender on their side right now. So I'm going to go with the Phoenix Suns because there's just not guys to guard Kevin Durant and Devin Booker, is a good way to put it. And then we have the 2-3 matchup between the young Thunder, the new kids on the block is a good way to put it. And then we have the experienced NBA reigning champions in the Denver Nuggets. I'm going to keep it short and sweet here. Give me the Denver Nuggets. There's nobody on this Thunder team that can even imagine guarding the Nikola Jokic, right? I know nobody in the league can guard Nikola Jokic. I mean, this is a guy that, as of right now, leads the NBA in points, rebounds, and assists. And he's a center. It's absolutely insane. We don't see that kind of dominance at that position often. But for me, the Nuggets are fully healthy, though they're not looking the greatest right now. I think they get the job done over a young Thunder team early, or in the second round of the playoffs. Then that sets up a rematch of last year's Western Conference Finals or Western Conference Semifinals, excuse me, between the Phoenix Suns and the Denver Nuggets, a series that went 6 games last year with, a lot of the same pieces in each matchup, but the Suns looked a little bit different. So that's going to set up an interesting Western Conference Finals matchup between the two of these teams. But then we move over to the Final Four. We have the Boston Celtics and the Milwaukee Bucks in the East in your top left. In the bottom left, we have the Denver Nuggets and the Phoenix Suns. Just to keep the, I guess, rhythm going, we're going to keep it, in the Eastern Conference, and then we'll finish off in the West. In the Eastern Conference, I think the determining factor in this game is going to be coaching and adjustments, just like it's always been in the NBA. And I think that's the reason why the Bucks won the championship that one year. The one year they adjusted with Mike Budenholzer is the one year they won the championship. And I'm just worried that they're not going to be able to do that with a rookie head coach in Adrian Griffin, a coach that has not shown much adjustments so far in the NBA season. You have, again, on one side, you have a second-year coach, but you have Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday against his old team. You have Al Horford. You have other solid pieces on the Celtics bench. And then you have the Bucks team, which is really Dame and Giannis. And again, Dame is hungry. He needs that first ring, and Giannis wants to prove he's the best player in the world. So for that reason, I'm just joking. We're going to go with the Boston Celtics to win this series, and I kind of spoiled it there. But we'll talk about this Western Conference matchup in a moment. So I will go with the Celtics due to the fact that they're going to make more adjustments, and I think you could throw Drew Holiday on Damian Lillard, and like we've seen in previous playoff series, Drew Holiday can at least minimize Dame and make it very difficult for him. So Dame's going to have a heck of a series with Drew Holiday guarding him, and I think that's a very tall task. It's going to put a lot of pressure on Giannis, and if you have Drew Holiday on Dame, you can just trap Giannis. You can just double team Giannis, force him to shoot from the perimeter, and I think Boston's just overall personnel-wise is going to have the advantage. So I'm going to go with Boston to make the NBA Finals. And then in the West, you already see I have the Denver Nuggets. However, in this matchup, I think it's just going to be the story from last year. Sure, you have Yusuf Nurkic now to guard Jokic instead of Jock Landale. However, I just don't think that's going to make a big difference. Or DeAndre Ayton, I forgot to mention him. I just don't think that's going to make a big difference. I think, just as a cohesive unit, I don't think there's a team, that has more chemistry than the Denver Nuggets. And again, Mike Malone and that that mindset that he's instilled in these guys, I think the Denver Nuggets are destined to return to the NBA Finals. However, I will say this: if Bradley Beal is here, and he's healthy, and we see how this unit works as a team, I might go with the Phoenix Suns over the Denver Nuggets. But because Bradley Beal's a 20-point per game scorer at the bare minimum. But for the simple fact that Bradley Beal's not here, I think it's just going to be the same song and dance from last year, a 6 or 7 game series, and the Denver Nuggets eventually come out on top with the win, and they will move on to the NBA Finals. Then we have the Boston Celtics, the Denver Nuggets. The Celtics on one hand, you have Jason Tatum, your best player, top 5, top 10 player in the NBA. You have Jaylen Brown, an all-star level talent. Drew Holiday, an all NBA level defender. No Kristaps, which I think could be a difference in the series. I know Kristaps Porzingis, but you still have Al Horford and other solid pieces like Derek White, maybe one of the best six men in the NBA, off the bench. But then for the Nuggets, we know the core they have: Jamal Murray, KCP, Nikola Jokic, Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., and of course some solid pieces off the bench like Christian Braun. To me, it's like the Nuggets, they've been there, they've done that, but also the Celtics have done, they've been there too. They haven't done it, but they've been there. A couple years back, they went to the finals against the Golden State Warriors, and they couldn't close the deal in that series. And the Warriors came back and they won that series. Very underrated finals, in my opinion. But in this matchup, I think the difference, or I guess an interesting point to put out there, is that Drew Holiday is going to have the Jamal Murray assignment, right? So you're going to have Jamal Murray on getting guarded by Drew Holiday. So let's just say Jamal Murray gets minimized in this series. The difference for me is, can Michael Porter Jr., can KCP, can Aaron Gordon make enough plays for Jokic to keep them in the series and to win this series? Last year we saw they could, even when Jamal Murray had an off night. But can they do that against a much more defensively built Celtics team compared to the last year Heat team that just didn't have the depth and the star power to keep up with the Nuggets? I think that's a very interesting dynamic in this matchup. As again, if Jamal Murray's out the game, can other guys step up? Or maybe the Celtics run a lineup where Derek White and Drew Holiday are together in this lineup, and then you have Derek White on Jamal Murray, and you have Drew Holiday on Michael Porter Jr. Then can Jokic single-handedly beat this Nuggets or this Celtics team? Of course, we know he can. He's maybe the best player in the world, but it's just a very tall task to ask. And for those reasons, I think just given the star power and the defensive depth of the Celtics, even without Kristaps Porzingis, the Celtics are going to be your 2024 NBA Finals champions. They're going to be hosting up the Larry O'Brien at the end of the day. At least that's what I believe will happen at the end of the season. Again, the Celtics, in this playoff run, they've had to go through the Cleveland Cavaliers, one of the best defensive, well, they have the potential to be one of the best defensive teams in the NBA. And again, of course, they have a superstar in Donovan Mitchell. Second round, they have to go up against a Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, revitalized 76ers team. And again, that's another tough matchup. Then you have the Milwaukee Bucks with Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo. It's a gauntlet for the Boston Celtics. And not to mention, on top of all of those three teams, you have to face maybe the best team in basketball, in the Denver Nuggets. So to me, it's a gauntlet, and it's going to be a much-deserved finals victory. But again, the Boston Celtics, to me, will be hosting your 2024 Finals Larry O'Brien Trophy. But that's going to do it here for today's video. Again, we ran through every single playoff matchup, and I do want to do a shout-out to Through the Wire. I saw them do this video about a week ago, and I said, you know what? That's something I've never really done on the channel before. Let me bring that to the channel, and let me just share my thoughts, because just a week ago, the NBA Finals and standings looked different. So they had a lot of different matchups than I did, and a lot of different scenarios that really could change anything, because we know with the right matchup, this team might not get past this team, right? So that could really change everything. So I'm not even sure who they had as their finals victory. But I do want to shout out to Through the Wire. Big inspiration. And of course, they did this video just a few weeks back. But that is going to do it for today's video. Tonight, I do want to throw out there that we have our Week 14 fantasy football waivers coming out, as it's win and get in for a lot of you guys for the playoffs, or it's at least win in position for the playoff picture, as fantasy playoffs start just next week or 2 weeks from now. So this is the most important time of the year to pay attention to your waivers. So if you're interested in that, or if you play fantasy football, come back to the channel tonight around 5, 6 o'clock to check out those videos. They're relatively short. I keep them anywhere between 9 and 15 minutes. Usually it's around that 10-minute mark. But again, that's going to do it. We'll see you guys tonight. Stay happy, stay healthy, get out of here.